Janet Buchan from Sturt University, and Janet is the Manager of Educational Design and Media inside the Learning and Teaching Services at CSU. Janet's been involved in professional development for staff and the use of technology for quite a while. Her research area covers things such as educational management, online assessment, which is obviously very dear to all our heart here in the Transforming Assessment series, and also about sustainable learning environments. And today, Janet is going to be talking about the Bridge Support Framework, which can be used to support online assessment. So, Janet, I'll hand over to you now.
Okay, just locking talk, so someone will have to remind me how to unlock it. Okay, so I'm just busy trying to get my slides up here, just sort of gone into maybe Mathew, you can, I've got the, there we go, we're up. Okay, thanks Jeff, and thanks Mathew for the opportunity to, I guess, share in this webinar session. I've got my video cam on, but if it does seem to be going slow on your end, then let me know. CSU Network's behaving itself today, so that's good. And so we hope for smooth sailing. So that's, as was introduced, I've been involved in, I guess, educational technology in a variety of forms for quite some time, like all of us, I guess. And so today I'm going to share just a bit of my experience and a few ideas in the online assessment area through a bridge support framework that I developed. But before we get getting back to the, getting into the, there we go. Okay, I think most of you should be aware of where Sturt University is. We're a bit schizophrenic because we spread ourselves very widely, and our main campuses, Bathurst, Wagga, Albury, but we have a variety of campuses in Canberra, Goulburn, Dubbo, Ontario, Canada, and a few other study centres scattered along the way. I'm actually down in Albury, the southernmost campus, and we're a nice rural campus, and there's a picture of the gum trees that we are, that we drive in and see each day. So you've had a bit of an introduction as to who I am, who I really am. Well, we do a variety of different things on weekends. Could be something like snow camping, mountain biking, walking, or going online and doing a lot of excessive reading and but mostly the outdoors is what keeps one sane when you spend a lot of time online. Seem to be getting a few slides thrown in there which are not.
Janet, you need to change to the correct folder. There's the drop-down menu next to the Go button towards the upper right-hand side. You need to change it to your Buchan Bridge Framework folder, then press Go. Then you'll get your folder list coming up. Yep.
Technically challenged there. All right, now we're on track, and just a bit of housekeeping from my side. Technical leads have been dealt with, and you've got Jeff and Matt. Protocols we've already dealt with in for the overall session. On these slides, really to remind myself, the hands is an activity where I ask people to engage through some way. It might be through chat or thumbs up, show of hands, things like that. And the question is, I guess, a chance for you to ask questions or me to ask questions of the, and the session resources, if there is any need to sort of follow up and things that people want and documents and so on, I can put those up on my website. So the aims of the session are just to give a very brief overview of some current Web 2 technologies that can be used for assessment, more, I guess, where people are at themselves than sort of share things. That's not really the aim of the session, but it is useful to know where we're all at and what our needs are, and that way you can perhaps tailor the session towards that. To introduce the Bridge Support Framework, as I explained, and to develop some networking opportunities amongst participants, because it's times like these that we suddenly discover, sort of kindred spirits. And I think that there's a lot of familiar names, not necessarily faces, because we tend to meet online or read each other's work and conference papers and so on. But that's certainly time just to find out where there might be some connections. So just a bit of getting to know you. We can certainly see some names that are online, and I know that we're all familiar with the institutions that we belong to. I know that we have one group, we've got a group from USQ that's joined us. So perhaps through the chat tool, you can just put your institution and perhaps your role, optional, and I might I don't know if the USQ group has got their voice or their audio going. Perhaps they would like to actually just sort of talk about who they've got there as a group. They could perhaps let us know, and I'll give up the talk button. Okay, so there's no audio from USQ. We've got a couple of people up there. So we've got Latrobe. I don't know if Sherry, you're local. We, of course, have you across the river in Victoria there. So we've got Hong Kong University, Melbourne, and a few Queensland, and of course CSU. We've got members from, I think, most of our main campuses that have joined us today as well. There's perhaps a tick from the participants in who's actually using or knows of online exams, or online exams they're actually using at universities. It's very specifically online exams, as opposed to any other sort of just general tests and quizzes and so on. Got one tick, a couple of ticks. Yeah, CSU doesn't have, we don't have any major online exam software, although we do have quiz tools. Formative, summative assessment, I guess just a tick as to who's using online assessment, I guess in its broader sense, for summative assessment. Either themselves or perhaps if you're in a support situation, you might be supporting staff who are using that. There are a few people there that are using it for summative assessment. Formative assessment, it's a tick for people that might be using online assessment, I guess in its broader sense, for formative assessment. A few more involved with that. So, a question just to mull over, in your own situation, in your own universities, are the heads in the clouds, cloud computing?
You have been talk enabled by the presenter.
Can you still hear me? Okay, so I'm getting an echo for myself. So perhaps Mathew, I don't know if you can still hear me. All right, got a few audio echoes and sound there, but hopefully you can still hear me. If you can't, somebody will probably tell me shortly. Just to mull over whether whether we still have our heads in the clouds, and perhaps in your own institution, cloud computing, or is it sort of very much university systems and only system tools? So we're moving towards thinking about, what other tools other than formal exams and systems might people be using. Perhaps, I don't know if somebody out there might have a positive experience in online assessment that they could share briefly. Perhaps a hand up or a tick, and we can give over to that. I don't know. I know that I'm sure many of you have used that. Okay, so was that the USQ room wanting to say something?
Hopefully our audio is coming through. I think I've fixed it now. If we use online exams extensively and modify particular courses, we take half the course is online only. And that's just the way we do it up here. We try and do as much online as we possibly can. So right back to you.
Thanks for that. Yeah, that's I will admit I did my master's through USQ fully online. I think I sort of was 2000 to 2002 in the early days, and that's what got me into this. I really enjoyed that online experience and everything fully online. The assessment wasn't at that stage except for uploading assignment type stuff, but we did. I guess that was still early days. I guess. Sharing a disaster in the online assessment, that's, I guess, where my reflection and so on sort of started. Where you go with lots of plans and it doesn't always go according to plan. I don't know if anybody has anything that they can share, but perhaps a smiley face or a non-smiley face might be sufficient to allow us to empathise with those that have probably learnt by experience. So it comes up in the chat as people are disapproving or approving. I'm not sure if they're disapproving or approving of the question, because I guess that's what the smiley faces don't quite allow you to do. But certainly, that's part of it. So we have a bit of an idea of who's out there, where people are coming from, and so moving on to Web 2 technology for assessment and today's students. I guess who are today's students? We have quite a variety there. The image there of Geoff Crisp was from a visit of his to our local campus here in Albury a couple of years ago, when he was doing a visiting scholar visit, and that's a typical lab at CSU. We've had a few like that. There's lots of upgrades along the in train. The right-hand image is an image of our Learning Commons, which is from the same campus, and it's a very new building, and it's a completely different sort of a feel. So I guess the Web 2 technology for assessment and today's students, we're going to get a very broad range. We've still got computer lab mentality for on-campus students, but we've also got the very open learning of people that could be learning sort of any space, anywhere. And with that in mind, looking at just very brief overview of Web 2 technologies. We're all very aware of a variety of different ones, but we don't always necessarily think of how to partition them. And so a few categories which might help you would be, I guess, online quizzes. We mentioned that. The online quizzes could be things that could be hosted or something that's downloaded, free, open source. Those of you that we use Sakai here at CSU, we've got a couple of native tools in there, one of them being Teta. I think in a number of your institutions might be using Moodle, and they've got the quiz module. Then you've got online exams, which are, I think, there's probably some open source, but I think a lot of them are commercial and commercially hosted. Respondus ? If anyone has any ones that they'd like to add to that, perhaps pop them in the chat, and it'll be just useful for us to see what other people might actually be using. I know that in the business areas and so on, there's quite a lot of online exam use, and also commercially produced quizzes and tests and so on that are available. And a lot of that is integrated now with the open source systems like Moodle, Sakai, and Blackboard and so on. Another category, I guess, of Web 2 technologies would be e-portfolios, PebblePad, Mahara, and there's quite a variety of other e-portfolios. We use PebblePad here at CSU. Then there's just simple administration. We don't often think about the administration side of online assessment, but things like just being able to submit assignments online, having with some sort of a Dropbox system, online marking. Now that might be something that's integrated into your system, or it might be an add-on. and there's some useful work that's being done with add-on systems, and we certainly at CSU we develop a lot of our own software, and so we're working towards a lot more online marking in this area. Then there's some software such as Turnitin and others, and a variety of different electronic grade books and so on. All absolutely vital, because if students can't upload their assignments online, they're not going to be too happy. And online marking is going to be, it's a really big growth area at CSU because of our very high distance student cohorts, and online marking then facilitates really speedy feedback, because it can be, quite a few weeks around for students that have submitted the assignments and then has to get posted back. But if it can go back online, or at least they can get the feedback online and the assignment follows, that's really getting a lot of positive response to that. But we've got a lot of education to do, and it's early days. Other categories are resource creation. So actually, somehow you just need some sort of create resources. There might be a Captivate presentation, e-simulations, podcasting, vodcasting. How do you create your YouTube videos to upload so that students can view them, and it might be part of an assessment task or just moving towards things. And so there's got to be a variety of technologies, and of course each institution has its own versions of that, but some more centralized, some more ad hoc. Forums and discussion boards have been around with some sort of the early tools, but there's a lot more work, lot more use of those in online assessment, and those, I guess, are getting sort of fit in with the next, which is collaboration and social networking. So you've got the whole gamut of wikis, Facebooks, Yammer, Twitters, ways in which people can engage with one another. And there's some interesting work that's, that people are using these different things for. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if anybody has any useful links or aspects of that, then that would be really useful to share with the group. Mathew's copied a URL there into the chat for me, which is good. Thanks, Mathew. And that's just one of our colleagues sent that round. It's a really useful directory of learning tools, and it's got a list of all sorts of tools under different categories, and with all sorts of free downloads and different aspects and so on. So that will be a useful resource for those of you that are wanting to sort of investigate a bit further. So I see that people have been adding in a few of their things that they use, Respondus and Blackboard, and that here, that I'm not familiar with that one, but I'll have a look at that one. Online polling is definitely fits in here, because I guess for me that's the instant feedback, and that's that students can provide, and that it's a really good learning tool. It could be in classroom, another. And yeah, the voting. I think Jeff, when you were with us at CSU, you were showing us some of those voting technologies, mobile phones, and so on. So, getting onto the bridge, because time is moving on. But that background, really, we need to, I guess, relive it and think about where we're at, because that's what the bridge support framework is for. It's about saying, analyze where you're at, take some bits, and then perhaps know where to move on. So the bridge support framework, its origins came through practical experience. Those are mainly a disaster, and also really sound research and thinking. When I first got involved in online assessment, it was just a simple multiple choice quiz tool that CSU had developed, and it was very small scale, and gradually the use really increased very rapidly with a bit of promotion, but also because people suddenly discovered that it's really useful to not have to mark 300 tests for students if you can actually get them to do it, even if it's just a quiz. So it was taken up very quickly, and so I embarked on a scholarship and teaching project with a couple of my colleagues, one in science faculty and one in the faculty of business. I think it was then the faculty of commerce. And so over a few years we looked at that, and we put out a report and the link on my website. But on the practical experience side, with a colleague, Michael Swan up in Wagga, he'd been working for some years around, using multiple choice in a very in-depth way for constructive alignment in his subjects, and so he was using it for statistical analysis of certain aspects of his teaching so that he could improve his teaching. It was a very interesting project, and along with that was the using it for summative assessment and for a mid-session exam. So a couple of years of practice and preparing small cohorts and then using it with a big cohort. And of course, like it came from the Bridge Too Far, which was the Battle of Arnhem, 1944. My history's not good, but I did go back to the original resource and read it through after our disaster, because Mike was fairly passionate about the analogy, and he was right. Basically, with all the planning in the world, there's just some things that just ultimately you can't really cater for, and that's a set of thinking, and that's how the bridge started. And so if in my position, you sometimes have to be fairly tough and put on appropriate headgear and so on when you've got to go into battle when you're supporting online assessment and technology, because I sit in learning and teaching services with sort of, I guess, the technological connections, and so we work with the information technology services, the IT services, around developing software. And at the time, it's a bit of a team effort, but it's always a bit of an us and them, and how you go into it. So we felt fairly passionate about it, and that's how we developed the framework. Now, the framework is in a large number of different types of frameworks and checklists out there. This is what we came up with, and I think it was the 2000 publication. And I haven't put numbers on the actual pillars of support, but basically the bridge support framework has 8 pillars, and depending on who you are, you would number them differently. So I'll go through each of them in detail, and so on. The pillars are communication, the IT support for end users, evaluation, budget, policy and guidelines, the IT infrastructure, the software, and pedagogy and research. And those are the ones that we came up with. We looked at lots of others and felt that this suited us anyway as something they'd use. So the question for the audience out there is, I guess, is the ball in your court? And what I mean by that is that you look at it and think, well, look, I'm just a lecturer. I just want to be able to go in and set up a quiz and be done with it. So I don't know that I really need to worry about the IT infrastructure, the software, the budget, IT support and so on. That should all be taken care of. But I'll be. I need to focus on the pedagogical design, perhaps the research side. But if you're in the IT support side, if you're on the service desk, well, you're very much going to be saying, well, I don't really care about the pedagogy, but I don't even know what that means and I can't spell it. But I know that I'm going to get a query. They've got this this new tool. They didn't tell me anything about it, but I need to know about that. And so so is the ball in your court? I guess there are some areas that we certainly don't need to engage with personally, but this at least gives you a framework for looking at strategies and at risk management. So where this becomes important is that if you perhaps find a free download software or think of a new use for a tool that that you've got in the suite of tools at your institution, it's probably really worthwhile just sort of making sure that these sorts of things are covered. So the IT infrastructure, I guess our experience was that we didn't have good enough guidelines in the early days, so no guidelines at all for the use around our, initial quizzes and so on, our multiple choice quiz tool. And so we started developing those, but getting that message out there is not all that easy, even if, there are help documents on. So I guess so it's those sorts of things that just having, I guess, good communication across the board, that is one that everybody would be responsible for, just being able to communicate. So from your own area, just think about your level of responsibility and where you sit, and I guess then thinking, well, who would I actually ask if I needed to find out if we had particular guidelines and so on. So the pedagogical design academic research, very briefly, that's just to ensure that the design of the technology itself, but the use of the technology is grounded in pedagogy and research. We certainly found that having access to education designers and a collaborative work with them was very valuable, which could really enhance learning. And in our case, because we were able to then link back into developments of the software, we've got that process CSU that was could make that potentially a very strong pillar. But it's an ongoing thing. I know that my colleagues out there will, we're still working on education. Just all it means is we just change systems. We've now got, Sakai and, new versions of Sakai, lots of new tools. So, it's an ongoing thing. It doesn't stop. I guess as far as the assessment design goes, you've got that continuum between formative and summative assessment and the purpose of that, so bearing that in mind. And there's just one link here which I can provide later, which is an interesting one which some of our colleagues did on using wikis in assessment, and wrote something on that. And that was just to say, and that feedback from that has then sort of helped increase improvements and future use of these tools. It's just the communication side. It's a very complicated thing, and one can probably extend this diagram, but the communication networks are potentially very great. You might just sort of think of oneself in an academic position or in our learning and teaching support services, but there's a lot of other people and connections when it comes to anything online, but in particular online assessment, is that you need to have people that are talking to all sorts of other people and making decisions all the time. And if there's any break in communication, that's where your bridge starts to collapse. Certainly, there's minimum communication, but also the more communication there is, the stronger it is. I guess the more struts to the bridge is the way that I see that. And communication was the one factor that we didn't find in any of the other frameworks that we looked at. But when people were analysing, aspects, we realised that what was missing was the communication, and that was the reason for a lot of the problem. Policy and guidelines, I know that people like Jeff and others have done, I guess, a lot of work in this, and I've had a lot of sage advice over the years around that. The 10 Commandments, well, it really would be nice to be able to say we had the 10 Commandments and policy around assessment, and that, people would then follow those. But, if God couldn't get it done, I guess neither can we. And but what is really important is that pillar of policy and guidelines, and that's the institutional administrative support. You can do just so much on your own, but without that, it makes it very difficult. And as I was reminded by one academic who had, I guess, abused the technology, in other words, not used it for the right purposes because they just hadn't sort of, on guidelines, and, a bit disappointed that things hadn't run according to plan. And they basically said, well, those are guidelines, but they're not worth the paper they're written on. And, so unless we get some policy and support from administration, that's, that is a problem. So, yep. Thanks, Jeff, for the advice. The lecture is always right. A hands-on activity, just perhaps a tick for those people that are aware of any policy at their universities that specifically addresses online assessment as opposed to general. So we'll ask that question first. If you have anything specific around online assessment, it may be integrated in your main assessment policy. That would be ideal. So if you're unsure, you can give me a non-smiley face, perhaps, and then we know that people with non-smiley faces are unsure whether there is guideline, any policy around that. And question mark, yep. So there's a question mark. Give me one of those. Yeah. Yeah, we have a variety. Some people are laughing and a number are confused. And I guess what it comes down to is that as far as policy and guidelines go, I recently went through the CSU assessment policy to look and see whether or not it covered everything that we needed for online assessment. Now, it wasn't sort of part of any formal thing, except that I know that there's a real need for it as our technology is rapidly speeding ahead of where our policy lies, and that's, I guess, standard. Hands up if you agree that policy is behind the technology, because that's so there's, yep. I'm getting a lot of dings because that tells me that there's a lot of hands up there, which I guess you can clear as you need to. But
Janet, I wondered, Janet, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
I just wondered whether Lynette's got her hand up, and I wondered whether she actually wanted to speak. So Lynette, if you would like to speak, do you want to keep that number 1 against your hand, and then we might hand the mic over to you. Okay, Lynette, go ahead and take the mic. Okay, I'm just agreeing. Okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as far as that goes, it was an interesting exercise doing that, and hopefully at some stage that will be used. The information's gone through to various learning and teaching committees, but ultimately, until there really is a need, and they're reassessing the assessment policy this year, hopefully that'll be of use then. What I have developed are some generic guidelines for online assessment, and those are hopefully going to get some sort of a tick and a mandate for use. And then based on those, we have guidelines for some tools, but not all, and it would be useful for PebblePad, for all of the Web 2 tools, that we can actually have some guidelines. And so that's an ongoing question of having time and the people to do that. But the generic guidelines which identify responsibility for students and staff, will be really useful once we can get those officially mandated. Evaluation. Not thinking so much here of the evaluation of individual, I guess, the pedagogy and the learning quite so much as the evaluation on the technology. So that I think there's a lot of pressure to justify input, justify expenditure on these things, and so from a university level, making sure that we can achieve the learning outcomes and that we can improve our systems. The IT support is a big area, and there's lots of different ways that one can look at that. There's never enough for everybody, and we identified some 3 areas according to, I guess, what one would see is the tier support system if you're into the IT area, and real time, which is training and professional development. I guess prevention is better than cure, so that's what we work on in our area, and we'll be rolling out a series of workshops. One of them on online assessment, another one around online marking and student feedback and so on, in a fairly big push to get a lot more professional development for staff now that we've got a lot of new technologies and lots more new stuff happening in the horizon. Troubleshooting, being able to get some sort of immediate response to troubleshooting and self-help online resources. And there's a number of different ways one can look at it, but certainly in online assessment, it's especially when it is summative and when people really need to know if they can't do their assignment, it's a problem. And staff and students, just who actually provides that support for staff, who provides it for students. There's not always guidelines and not always clear delineation at different universities. I'm not sure about your own institutions, but for those of you that are involved in that area, you'll know what the problems are. I'm just looking down at the chat. Jeff asked if I'll share my guidelines. I certainly will share the guidelines, but I'll need to get a mandate for that. So once I get somebody that says I can use those for our workshops at CU, and I'm putting together a workshop which will hopefully be able to be, within the next month or two, then I'll certainly share them. I can send them to you though. Perhaps you can tell me if there's anything we need to change. Software, as I mentioned when I said, is the ball in your court? Well, if you are into things, good, reliable, bug-free, user-friendly, I guess, if you just go on to something, and if it's Respondus or, the native Moodle quiz tool, I guess one would expect it to be reliable, bug-free, user-friendly. With open source software, and of course Moodle, Sakai, and there's others that are open source, you're into a very different game, and that's why there can be a certain amount of experimental aspects to do with the software, and so it is something that one can't, I guess, take for granted, and one would need to sort of work through it, test these things out, talk to the people that matter, and get their advice so that you know what you're in for. And other people, there's lots of stuff available in cloud computing, so much available that if one just sort of keeps these things in mind when you might be trying, and I imagine that many of the people that are online today are the innovators in their areas, then those are just some of the things to think about. Obviously, flexible and adaptable is useful, and that's why CSU's gone with open source. Not for everybody, but certainly that's with us and with Sakai. That does give us a certain amount of adaptability. The IT infrastructure is absolutely critical. It's not something that many of us can do a great deal about, except perhaps ask the searching questions if you get an opportunity and know what questions to ask. But as far as it goes, the questions to ask would be in the planning of any assessment task. The load testing, has the load testing been done? I mean, who's actually going to be using it? I mean, if it's CSU, you could have a class of I think in that. I think, what is it, June the 6th, 2006, when my colleague Michael Swan and I had his major crash in his exam, where 260 students couldn't get on to it. I mean, they'd come from, I think they had Europe, America. I don't think we had Africa. We certainly had Asia, and we had them from all over Australia. And of course, people were up at 1 or 2 in the morning in different time zones, sitting in, ready to do the test. Some people had taken a full day off work so that they could stay home to do their, the particular time. And so, knowing that, we'd done our homework and we'd asked the questions, but I don't think all the tests had been done. It's an isolated case, and things have certainly, things have changed a lot, and that was, quite some time back. So we're in a very different place now. But those reliable servers and they could use just knowing that those are the people that you're dealing with. So setting a 7 p.m. might not suit somebody who's in a different time zone for that particular, for those questions. So the IT infrastructure, something that when I was looking at the IT infrastructure, I guess with mobile learning and mobile technology and the difference in wireless and so on, things are so rapidly that's the other area is how our IT infrastructure supports that aspect of the new students and the new way that people are engaging as well. I don't know if at this stage anybody has any questions. Moving on to the final pillar, which is the budget. The budget operates at a number of different levels. Now, that might be, I guess, just simply a budget for a lecturer to actually develop stuff online, and it's not necessary that it can be very time consuming to type in all your questions if you have your software doesn't easily support just upload a Word document or and so on. Many softwares do, but not all of them. Certainly some of the ones that we have used, and certainly in the Sakai system, those are some of the features that we're putting forward into the new system to say, right, that's what we need. So those are certain aspects, and of course if people are using online assessment, so when you roll over from one system to another and people have got quite a lot of stuff in an old system but it doesn't readily roll over to a new system, you then need to look at, well, how do you actually, do we have a budget? Can we support people to move it across into a new system? We certainly found that as far as it goes, the budget aspect, which I think drives a lot of the work in this at universities, and perhaps we can get a hands up or maybe a tick if you know of people that use online assessment at your institution to save money on marking, to save money, in some way in their teaching. So we got a couple of ticks there. I guess we don't like that idea that that is it, that people use that, but there's nothing wrong with that. And as we did, we did the calculations in our research, and it was over $4,000 that could be saved by using the online multiple choice. It's only one part of the assessment, it's 20% and so on. It was a bit of a driver for the faculty, and that's why they were quite keen for people to engage with that. But the pedagogy did come first, and the constructive alignment in the research before that. But there is a big push for that, and every now and again the idea of online exams comes in. Yeah, so I see Jeff's given us the Criterion link there. Yes, I met the chap from Criterion at the DE Hub conference in Sydney, and that was really interesting. Yeah, it was a very interesting discussion there, which we can continue later on Criterion and so on. I talked to them about this bridge support framework, and he was the Criterion man was very interested because he thought it would be a really useful analysis tool as to why some of their implementations hadn't quite worked, that there were certain aspects that just weren't working in institutions, and things like the policy and guidelines and not having those things in place. I guess I'm digressing on some of these things, but I guess budget, one of the things certainly in our own institution is that as yet we haven't committed any way in a big financial way to online assessment as such, but I'm sure that the time will come where they suddenly say, right, online exams will be the thing and so on, but you obviously need to invest very heavily in that in a number of different areas, and so when that happens, I guess we'll know about that. So, from as a summary, I'm sort of conscious of the time heading towards 5, and heading towards 6 here, and I guess it's 5:30 for the Central Australians. The summary of the 8 pillars of support, I've been through them, so just give you the opportunity to perhaps put your hand up, and I'll stop talking for a while. I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions that they would like, and so perhaps I'll deactivate my talk button, and if people wanted to put their hand up, then we can take a few questions.
A lot of online systems without really considering the implications of, first of all, the students using it, all the systems going down. You were speaking before about a lot of horror stories. Obviously, we've had our fair share. And most of it's come down to a real lack of foresight about the IT infrastructure, both at USU and what the student has. And I think one of the problems that we have in our institution is really coming to terms with identifying what the student has, what the capabilities are, and how to ensure and guarantee a 100% safe and equitable exam or test environment.
Well, I don't know that you can guarantee a 100% safe environment or secure, and I think that I think we have to be very, very realistic about that. I, certainly was very intrigued with my conversations with Criterion people, just because, they've got a lot of really good work that they're doing around the security and so on. But as far as reliability goes, and I think that comes down to the risk management, and that's really what people just need to be. Is have certain, plan A, plan B, plan C in place, and not assume that the technology will work on the day, although obviously you do plan for that. But, I don't think there can be any guarantees, and that's one of the things is that I know that we've had these conversations with our IT services people, and they prepare to say, look, we can give you 98, we can give you 99, maybe close to 99.5, but we can't give you 100%. And ultimately, to get that 100% is a whole new ball game in their investment and costs and things like that. So yeah, so I guess I don't know the question that I'm really keen to find out more about, because I haven't really sort of thought about, I haven't really sort of had my head into the online assessment space as such for a little while, is really where we're at with mobile learning, where we're at with and so on, in trying to actually limiting access. I think for me, open book exams and so on, I'm not sure that as far as the and secure stuff goes, but certainly reliability, whether it's an exam or just simply being able to get online to do a bit of a feedback exercise, is essential.
Janet, yeah, certainly when I tried to introduce some sort of assessment policy at the University of Adelaide, the problem was not getting agreement on the principles. Everyone agreed on the principles. The problems came when the sorts of things that you're talking about the responsibilities and the budgets, things like that. And that's where the whole thing came at the start. But what I thought was really interesting about all of that, and even the discussion today about guarantees, the 100% reliability under these exam type conditions, I think we actually need to question why we run exams the way we do at the moment. And quite frankly, the way we run exams at the moment is an artifact of the way that we've been teaching as well. So one of the things I've been certainly asking people to think about is, why do we spend time for exams where everyone has to sit in the same place at the same time to be able to do exactly the same thing? Because people equate that with validity and reliability and fairness, that sort of thing, because all the students are being treated in exactly the same way. But I actually think we need to move away from that. And I think we need to start questioning this whole idea, because once you move into the online environment, and this is the sort of thing we've been talking about as part of the Transforming Assessment webinar series anyway, is that you start offering so many new possibilities to students about how they can respond and what resources they can use to respond, and what artifacts they can use in helping them to respond, to give you actually responses that are much, much more sophisticated than what you're going to get them to do by herding hundreds of them into a room and getting them to write on bits of paper. So I think what we need to do is to not try and replicate what we've done in the past, which is exactly what a lot of online assessment is. From my point of view, I see most online assessment at the moment trying to replicate what we already do in paper-based assessment, or using the types of paradigms that we've used traditionally. And so I suppose what I'd certainly like people to do is think about this, and think about why do we continue doing things the way we do? Surely we should be doing them differently. So I'll stop with this. Some other people I think want to make some comments.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jeff. That's very good advice, and certainly I'm very pleased as long as CSU doesn't doesn't go the online exam way, and can keep promoting. That's why I guess we started the discussion looking at Web 2 technologies and all the different tools and so on that we are using, and realizing that all of those are online assessment tools and can be used to that purpose. So USQ room, you get the mic.
Thanks very much. Yes, I just want to pick up on something Geoffrey said. It's true what he said. Because of the online environment, it's not really a good way to force everyone into the same time slot. So we have a course where we actually have 22 different time slots. So the students get to choose. There's that flexibility. Obviously, there's the overhead of ensuring that the style of the exam is common for all. So that was one of the ways we got around that particular issue, which is by having multiple time slots. They can sort it out. If we had a technology failure, we could roll people over to the next time slot. That's it.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Yeah, we certainly, and those are some of the backup plans that we sort of encourage people to put in motion when they are using these real-time exercises. But even if you give people a week to submit an open book test online, they will leave it to the last minute. It will all crash in the last 15 minutes of a 7-day period because that's how students are. But anyway, that's part and parcel of it.
Janet, I don't think you've turned your mic back on.
Okay, yep, now my mic's on, thanks for that. So as we sort of head towards, I guess, the hour of the session, so I'll certainly be staying around after to, people want to catch up and ask any particular questions and probe some of you a bit more. So, if you want to follow up, you've got can get a couple of the links off my website. I'll put a copy of the actual bridge, although there's a link to a paper, I'll put a copy of that up on the website as well.
Okay, Janet, I might just do a formal thank you then for your presentation. We're going to stay online, so people don't have to rush away straight away. And the other thing that we'd like you to do is there's a survey that we have as well. So as we're starting to have the discussion, Janet, if you don't mind, I might just put up the survey, because people might want to start going off and doing other things. So first of all, thank you very much for your time, Janet. Thanks very much, everyone, for coming online. So as I said, we're not closing down now. We're going to have the ongoing discussion. I know some people may need to go on. So I'll just bring up the survey in a minute, and that should appear on the screen. Please feel free to ask any questions while we're doing this.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can see from my website that, I guess the obsession with technology to my PhD research, where I'm busy looking at sort of developing resilience and managing change in technology-enhanced learning environments. So, because of all this rapid change in technology and so on, I feel okay, we've got a good framework here. If we could just stick to that, obviously, it's not that easy. But but how do we actually manage this constant change? And that's the discussion for another time. So, so if you take the time to answer the survey.
I also had a session with the Criterion people too, Janet, and I thought it was very interesting speaking to them, because we actually had them come to Adelaide when I was there and give a presentation and talk to us about, obviously, the technology that they use, the approach they use, and everything. And I thought the reason I think it's interesting to talk to them is that they at least have gone down the path of saying, look, if you want to run fully invigilated online exams where people are literally anywhere in the world, and these are high stakes summative assessment type exams, and you want to guarantee as much as you humanly possibly can, that person X is the one sitting there doing the exam. They've at least sort of tried to have a go at doing that. And as you would have seen, I think we were talking to them, they use the webcam, so that when the students are sitting at their computer doing the exam, they have to have the webcam on. It's being monitored live, so some poor person is sitting at a massive big screen, which is divided up into, I don't know, did they tell you how many people they monitor now on the one screen? Because it used to be 24, and I think they were going to up around 48 or 50 or something per screen. So some poor person sits there watching everyone do these exams. And if that person sees anything that they think is a bit suspicious, what they do is they immediately stop the everyone else, just for that one person. And then a sort of a 1-800 or 1-300 number or something appears on the screen, the computer screen for that particular person. And it says, you know, your exam is being stopped. We think that whatever it is, you know, the lights are too dim, or there appears to be someone else in the room. There's sort of, you know, you appear to be using a resource under the table or something like that. There's all sorts of, you know, interesting things that happen. And what I thought was really interesting also with the criteria for people is the types of things they said students get up to in trying to do some of these exams. And just where they, you know, they literally do try and have someone hiding behind a curtain, sort of holding up cards for the person who's sitting at the computer trying to do the exam. People with books under the desk trying to turn them with their feet, and you know, all those examples. All I could think of was that's actually not the student's fault. That's actually the fault of the question that these students are being asked to do. It's the fault of the task. I mean, if you set a task for someone where they can have a book under the table, turning the pages with their feet to answer the question, it's actually the wrong sort of question that you're asking them. And also, someone can hold up a card and sort of give you a response that you can make to an assessment task. I think the problem is again with the task. So I think it actually gives us something very much to think about in terms of what types of questions are we actually setting students, what types of tasks are we actually giving them to do, and that's really where the emphasis should be, I think, rather than sort of going to the extreme, not the extremes, but sort of the extent that people like Criterion go to try and stop people cheating, because that really only works. I mean, Criterion's only got a business because people set standardized tests. And what they're trying to do is then stop people cheating on standardized exams. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Yeah, say they're asking the wrong questions. Yeah, I mean, certainly you can see. I mean, they make the money because of the standardized stuff, because they need to, because I mean, it's education's critical, and competency-based education. So I guess that's a challenge at universities, is to fight hard to stop heading down that way. But it's becoming increasingly difficult, I think.
Yes, I agree. I think it is difficult. Part of the problem is to redesign those tasks so that they're meaningful tasks for students, as well as being able to be assessed in a sort of reasonable workload model for academic staff as well, for teachers, because the more complex you make the response that the students can make, and the more elaborate that response is going to be, then obviously often that means that it's actually more difficult, it's more time consuming to be able to then assess that. And so again, we really need to be looking at that whole paradigm of, okay, we've set a task for students, what sort of response do we expect them to make? If they are going to make a response, what format do we expect that to be in? And then do you, how much time is it worth investing marking those particular responses? And I guess this is where the whole issue of sort of the peer self-assessment and those sort of things comes in as well. And again, David Bouts talked a lot about that assessment future stuff, about setting tasks for students where it's actually more about the process rather than the product. So it just brings up so many things when we start talking about the online assessment area. And I think it's really interesting that people's first reaction to online assessment, as I said before, is to duplicate what goes on in the non-online area. And most of the questions people have about online assessment is actually related to duplicating what goes on in the sort of paper-based or non-online area.
Yes. I must admit that in our own area of learning and teaching support, I'm very, very conscious of our roles, I guess, as educational designers and technologists and our responsibilities to lecturers, to academic staff and so on, to advise them wisely in the use of these tools, because we've got a lot of innovators in different areas and so on, and they're the ones that do put a lot of time into things, and they're the ones that make mistakes. They're the ones that we learn from. And I think that I guess they eventually get tired of that, and you see even the most innovative people saying, well, next time round it'll just be an essay. I've got 600 students in that cohort. I've got 8 different people that have to market. An essay is a whole lot easier than trying to get people to upload a brochure and a PowerPoint and various things, which I guess the online system doesn't support in uploading, and even just simple things like that. You're not even looking at, it can be not just the online assessment, not just the tools and the test tools, but those other systems. And certainly we've done some major upgrades in our online submission systems here to cater for some very exciting stuff with a whole lot of different formats and online marking and so on, because that's very clearly the way we're going. And student feedback. I don't know. I know that one of our CSU people that's online was busy developing a workshop around student feedback, online marking, and so on. I don't know if anybody out there has any advice or tips around that, but certainly that's an area that for us as part of a commitment to CSU's made a number of commitments to its students, and one of those commitments is around the student experience and timely feedback and so on. So that's something that we now have. That's in our new university plan and our university strategy. So that's something that we're going to be committed to doing as well in the next few years. Now, I think if people haven't done it badly, but in a distance education institution, you have to start thinking, beyond just assignments and posting them back.
Yeah, thanks, Janet, for that. That's certainly true. I just wonder, could I ask a question just about the bridge support framework, and just what sort of buy-in have you got from the rest of the university community about this bridge support framework? Like, is it just something that's relevant to sort of your group or your area, or is this something that other people have bought into across the institution?
No, well, I guess I haven't sold it to anybody, but I haven't put it on in a big way. My colleagues that I work with, I guess on the educational technology front and so on, are very aware of it, but I think it's just something that you have to keep revisiting. I mean, the biggest thing is, I guess, I'll use it personally, but I think people, but I mean, I don't know that, you see, each area has their own way of checking things. I mean, it would be useful if everybody was using the same framework and so on. But it's not been something that, I guess we did it as an academic exercise. I mean, it was a while back now, 2006, 2007, and then you sort of move on, get involved in other things, and then you sort of come back to think, that wasn't a bad thing actually. You sort of forget about it because you're sort of using it in your own work. But it certainly is something that in papers that one's written, or when I've had to give feedback or give input into systems improvement and so on. That's where I find that you can at least you can then just sort of put a link to a reference and put a link to the scholarship and teaching paper, and that at least if it's something that's got to go to the learning and teaching committee, there's an academic reference there. It's based on good sound scholarship, and that's where the value of scholarship and so on is, to actually have done it that way. But certainly my current research and PhD aspect is very much around the systems, and that was a system, but at the time I hadn't thought of it as a system, but that's the connections in the systems.
Okay, thanks. I think it's really useful to have some sort of framework when you are working in sort of policy area, because obviously now in lots of policies there's sort of you have your principles, and there's supposed to be your guiding principles, and then you have the rest of the sort of implementation stuff that comes from that, whether that's these various names or that those other bits come under. But I think a framework is actually something that is really useful, because, and especially the way you've done it in a diagram, because I think that's a visual cue to people. And again, personally, I'm a very visual sort of person with these types of things. And if it's just pages and pages of text, I often think, well, how do you give me a summary? Like, how do you capture that in something that's really quite succinct? And I think diagrams actually do that. The only thing I kept thinking of when I saw the bridge support framework, and especially yours, the allusion to wondering whether you think that the bridge support framework is a bridge too far.
No, I think I think they could have done with it at the Battle of Arnhem because it gives you a good good sound stuff. I mean, no, the bridge too far really was, everyone goes into it. Everybody did the best that they could, and there was just a couple of weak links in particular battles and so on. And as far as the actual framework goes, being a bridge too far, but I think I guess as you say, what sort of buy-in have I had at the university? I mean, I really haven't sold it as such, but I certainly, as I say, one uses it, and when I sort of, when you write a policy document, you suddenly realise that actually you've gone through all of those things. I mean, and as far as it goes, I mean, perhaps, perhaps I do need to start sort of selling it a bit more, because when I mentioned the, going through the CSU assessment policy and looking at the, if there were any limitations, and pretty sound. There's really, there's not a lot that one would change. But what I discovered when I went through that, and this is where I guess the bridge was really useful, was the fact that the policy's pretty sound, but the operational aspects of the policy are the problem, because things have changed. And so because we now have online technology and we have, and there's a whole lot of changes and so on. So there's, the policy used to simply be, okay, you now have other stakeholders who need to be represented in the policy, and they're not. And those stakeholders are the IT services, the student services, and learning and teaching services actually aren't represented in the policy as such, as stakeholders and people that have a foundational commitment, or have a foundational responsibility in assessment at the university. And so that, for me, that was what I picked up, was thinking, okay, the bridge, you've got all these connections, you've got the communication, all these people need to communicate, and that was my feeling anyway. Is that, but clearly everyone, it's the IT people saying, well, we can give you 98.5, maybe 99, but we can't give you 100% guarantee all the time that these things will work when you need them. So just warn your people.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Again, I think just getting back to the bridge sort of analogy, the thing that really struck me and I liked about this was you've got your pillars, which are sort of the main big support there. You've got the struts, the supports that go between that, and they're the things that actually hold the pillars together. Because when you build a bridge, I mean, the bridge is just going to fall down. All of the struts and the various sort of connecting bits you've got together, they actually hold it all together. That's the glue that keeps it up, that keeps it in this sort of format. And the image that you've got there also has a platform, which I actually quite like as well, because there's a platform also connecting those various things. So I think the idea of sort of using this visual analogy of the bridge is really good, because it actually emphasises the importance of all those bits, and that it's no point just having the pillars if they aren't actually supported by those struts and guides that go between them.
Yes, it's good that, so that platform, I hadn't sort of thought about it until I sort of revisited the diagram when I was sort of doing the PowerPoint presentation. I was just sort of thinking of my one daughter when she was, I think she was a preschooler and her sisters were at school, and she, they come back with you've got that homework, in primary school. And if you're stuck on a desert island, what 5 things would you take, and, so everyone's got their bit to add at the dining room table. The 5-year-old just, they've got different things, take water, and they take, tent and whatever it might be. And she just said, I take a bridge. And sometimes we really don't think of them as just things. We have to, create a lot of issues for ourselves.
Yeah, very good, very sensible. Is there anyone else who would like to make any comments or ask any questions, or just talk about make a comment about their experiences in this, or if they wish to share anything? Okay, we'll just enable your microphone, because I think that was one of the mics that we turned off because there seemed to be a lot of interference from it.
You have been talk enabled by the presenter.
Yes, there is a lot of feedback. I don't know. So I'll be very brief. I was impressed at how well the WIMBA session worked.
Okay, thank you for that. Hang on, we certainly was off the angles. Okay, that's better. Well, actually, I probably shouldn't tell you all this, but I've just recently moved to RMIT, and so I hadn't actually tried WIMBA till last week. I think it was a Friday or something. I thought I should try it just to see how it was going to work. I couldn't get it to work on Friday, and because obviously I used to be at the University of Adelaide, now I'm at RMIT University, and so I called up the IT people. They came down. It took them 3 days to get WIMBA to work, and it probably took about 3 of them working on it. One of them in particular, and really highlighted this whole issue of how different universities lock down their systems so hard that you just can't do anything. And so you have to go through step by step to get permission for absolutely every little thing that you want to do inside the firewalls and inside the way universities set up their systems. Which again, it's perfectly reasonable from an ITS point of view. So looking at your structures there, the support you've got there, I mean that's fine for some of those things, but it really did highlight to me that we could be really innovative inside our universities to try and get our students to do things, but then other parts of our system are working very much against that. I mean, we eventually got it to work, but I just couldn't believe how much effort it was, and it was actually nothing to do with WIMBA itself. It was all to do with the way the permissions have been set on the different computers and what it was going to allow people to do. And I think that's an issue when we talk about assessment as well, because it's not just about what the pedagogical aspects. And it's not just about what particular browser you're using, but it's also how people have actually set up these systems and what someone else has decided you can and can't do.
Yeah, we can definitely relate to that. And so we recently invested in WIMBA, and we saw, I guess it's still relatively early days, but because it's being externally hosted and so on, we had a couple of interesting sessions and so on, and that was one of the ones that we had. Once again, you have innovators, and they hear about this new thing. The next thing, they're using it to teach, 60 DE students between 5 and 6 in the evening or something. And when the system does it, and it's a live lesson. It's not an online assessment, but you've got a live lesson going, and the system goes down, and it's not so good when you've got when it goes down. And that was they worked through the issues and so on. And I guess there just has to be one unfortunate person that discovers that, and we just there's various load testing and various other things that they've now sorted out. The question of setting expectations, and that's why I commented earlier. Feel a big responsibility in our area where you have some knowledge and so on in this to sort of try and ensure that all of the pillars are addressed. But unfortunately, you can't. It's not that easy to get it right. But we're certainly improving all the time.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions people would like to ask or make? Okay, Janet, were there any other final comments you wanted to make as a sort of a wrap-up?
No, just thanks to those people that have joined, and I guess those that have left for and so on. And I'm certainly happy to strike up any conversations with people that might want to follow up. And it'd be useful if anybody does find use for the bridge. As I say, it's just one of those things that it's just a framework, and whether it's a framework for a new system, let's tick all the boxes and make sure that before something is implemented or while it's being implemented, we've covered all the bases. And the other thing is, of course, and also use it as an evaluation tool. It doesn't only have to happen when things have gone wrong, but at the end of the day, if one's doing some research and so on, around student access and so on, it could be a useful thing there as well. So it can be used as a planning tool as well as an analysis tool for post work. But again, thanks Jeff, and thanks Mathew, and yes, we'll get the link at some stage and be able to share it with a few colleagues and so on who weren't able to be here today, but they were interested since they're going to have to be presenting workshops fairly soon around online assessment and good practice designing online assessment. So we thought, well, this could be a bit of a useful bit of background for them.
Okay, thanks very much, Janet. And thank you very much for everyone who came today and for those of you who stayed on for the discussion. So, Mathew, we'll probably stop the archiving now and just say thank you very much, everyone. And keep an eye on the Transforming Assessment website for the next webinar. We're still negotiating with a couple of people as well. So there'll actually be a few more throughout the year. So keep coming back to have a look to see what's on. And thanks very much and goodbye, everyone. And Janet, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it.